This is Wednesday, Suzanne Sassoon-Ster. And I'd like to make another pointless video, if I may. It was written a long time ago by T.C. Brunzi. This is called Jacob's Manulatenson Ladder. Hopefully I won't decapitate myself. Ah, fuck a pig. Alright, kids, sometimes you gotta say, what the fuck? My single greatest creation, since it probably will go unheard by the world, man, in a fully fucking finalized form. This one, Bach would derelict my balls and be fucking kind of envious that he didn't discover it, man. Like, for real. It was on my first manic episode at the Turning Stone Casino's Onyx Lounge, before a Johnny Hart and the Jumpstarts gig in 1997, folks, is what the problem comes from sometimes, isn't it? Quiet on the set now. Here's my single greatest discovery. Fuckface. Right turn, Clyde. Get thee hence, Schmelten. Get behind me, Schmelten. Don't fucking bratty fucking toddlerize me.
What's going on?
Look, get spanked.
What, you can't hear it? I was just finger
Look, kid. You're this high and you ain't even got me on your terrible Tuesday. I will give you a fanny feeding. Do you understand me? From now on, you little fuckface. Kevin, look at me, Kevin. Kevin Kaku, you listen to me, you little fuck. When I tell you to come, you're gonna fucking come like that kid in the fucking Christmas Story. What, are you gonna cry, little private? Come on. You gonna crack some heads and give me the evil eye and be crazy? I said stop playing. I will spank you until you are in the previous week. I will tear the strings off that fucker and asphyxiate you, Kevin Kaku. Now let me just, for the video posterity of history,
My bad.
and do not interrupt me anymore or you will get beaten like the child should be beaten every once in a while. You know what I mean, man?
Alright.
Because that's the problems come from sometimes, isn't it? Anyhow, this is written on sovereign Iroquois fucking territory. The whole fucking continent is fucking Indian, man. Confederacy of the Six Nations, the eagle in the tree of long leaves you could see from afar. That's what the Romans come from sometimes, isn't it? That's a fucking A triad from the 1-3-5, a half step up to the 3-5-1, and I was like, well, wait, that kind of sounds like it wants a lead up to here. B triad in the 1-3-5, and I was like, what if I go a whole step now, and then lead up to here, D triad, and then go a whole and a half step, then go another, go another. You know what I mean? Doesn't that have the sound of a heavenly journey? And then the journey homeward starts like right here. Doesn't that particular sequence of triads sound like a homeward journey? Eat your fucking It's a do or die situation. We'll be invincible. Thank you, thank you. I'd like to say hello to all the viewers on Inaccessible Island. Yep, that's near nowhere, like in the middle of the fucking Atlantic Ocean. I'd like to dedicate this to all the creatures stirring on Hashima Island. To that disc casting a shadow clearly visible if you do a little searching for a couple hours near Area 51, and if you try to type up the coordinates, you'll get some anomaly with the time that you enter the comment to your coordinate Facebook entry. But then it'll correct itself just before you get the videotape to confirm it. And that's what the problems come from sometimes. I mean, the cat's really insecure, so they say ballistic motion. Oswald was hanging by his anus hairs while hemp rope wielding claw-tailing pro-Fidel Castro pigeons held him aloft while that fly that flapped fucking preventing Columbus from fucking starving in the Sargasso Sea. That little flap caused a windburst just as that anal hemp pigeon cabal helped Oswald float into fucking air, man, as that fly from 1492's cause and effect so many moons later just had a poof. So it seemed like fucking official Warren Commission case closed. Ballistic motion. Faggots! Like I said in the Casus Belli, suck a piece of shit. Black intelligence wizards. I mean, seriously, you must be watching this. I mean, come on, man. Derelict, a disgusting vat of 10 different varieties of fermenting fecal matter in a greenhouse near the equator that's been like fucking brewing inside there for like a week. And that's an insult to that fecal matter to place it in the company of the Black Ops intelligentsia. Suck a turd, and like that's being really cruel to turds. If we're drawing a line to a close down, the Technicolor lights flicker out of town. And the hurricanes keep rolling around. And the chemical trails that turn into clouds. All of you lying cheaters who are swinging on the evil Knievel's playground. They gave a rope to the executioner, and now we might have to hang on. If the close down has to be despite the pleas that your mothers pray for, put your alligator in a a pickle jar. And release the doves with their feathers tarred. Master of the vineyard sings, been hiring for late hour workers. Light your torch on the hilltop, man, there's saboteurs all around. Swung from the devil's playground, gave the rope of swords to the executioner, and now what if we might all have to hang on? If the close down is drawing nigh, despite the pleas that your mothers pray for. Goodbye, dancing with the stars. I guess you had no time to see the world was stolen from you. Ooh. Are you free? Would you die for freedom? Would you die so someone else could be free? Well, this song's for them. It's called Mandatory Suicide. movie of dog shit videos. Brought to you by me. XOX.